Again, you can use the chat to write it into the chat what it was that you've done, but you can also write it into directly towards me so that it's more anonymous. And I will, of course, keep it for myself. Okay. So that's video call, share what is happening in my life, express gratitude. Okay, gratitude is a good one, to not take things for granted, but to really also express what you really appreciate about what the other person has done or who the other person is, and or maybe appreciate the relationship. Then we have, well, respecting is quite general, of course, but it's of course an attitude. TV time as a family, listening to each other, act their day, ask questions. Yes. Okay. So send a text message to say, I'm thinking of the other one. Yeah, that's also good. Now, you can also ask yourself, how many times have you done this in the last 24 hours? Not this one thing, but how many other things have you done? And it's really true that the more we proactively do to connect with the other person, to do something that brings us closer, that strengthens our connection, the more likely it is that conflicts do not arise, actually, or at least when they arise in a very different spirit. So it's important to keep that connection strong as possible. And that's your responsibility. Of course, the other person has also their responsibility to do it the same, or to do also their part. And I know that some people will say, yeah, it's always me, and the other one never does that. And of course, it does not feel really good if you're the one that always gives and the other person never gives. So yes, of course, there needs to be a certain balance. And at the same time, you also have to see that some people are just not that good in doing that. And it's again about what's your responsibility here. Can you help them? Can you help your partner in connecting in a better way? Maybe by creating an atmosphere of emotional safety where the other person feels ready to or more courageous to share something deeper, for example, to create an atmosphere of not judging the other person, really listening more. So I want to share with you, and this is going to be quite a personal workshop from my side as well. I want to share with you what I do on a ritual base, because that's the next level, to establish rituals on a daily basis that can help strengthen the relationship in a way that you have your pillars on a daily basis, and you avoid drifting apart from each other without really noticing. So the pillars I have with my wife, the first thing is that before I put my feet on the floor, I give her a kiss. So that's the first thing I do in the morning before I do anything else, to give her a kiss. And that's, by the way, when you had a conflict the other day before and you don't really feel that much and you have that ritual, it gives you a little bit of a kick to say, all right, forget about my ego. I do the first step, and it's our habit, it's our ritual, and I should do it. And that is already a way of reconciling with the other person, or to bring yourself back together, even though maybe some things still haven't been sorted out. The next thing that I do is I prepare my wife's breakfast. That's also a daily ritual for myself. While I prepare mine, and I have mine, I prepare hers. Normally I'm getting up before her. When she gets up, I normally am still there, and normally she always gets a big long hug while we're standing. So maybe 2-3 minutes before anything else starts. That's the first thing in the day. Then in after lunch, for us, it's a ritual to always have her sit on my lap for 5 minutes and just cuddle every day after lunch. And it's this time, you can say, well, I don't have the time, I have to rush, but this is a very important time for us because it's really also a time of being close to each other, feeling each other, and having that connection. And if we, for example, have a discussion, an argument, a conflict over lunch, this habit brings us back together again in a way that we are already closer, we can feel each other, we can feel the connection while we are arguing. And that is, of course, a very different way of arguing than when you are in a certain distance to each other. The next thing is that the same in the evening when we have the chance to eat together, and at night. And I don't want to go through all the other parts, but at night it's the same thing. We would always hug for a while before we fall asleep. So this frame gives us a very strong platform for, let's say, always being able to come together, maybe also moments when there's a conflict. So this is one of the recommendations I can give you. And you can think about, do you have rituals yourself? Is there anything that you do that is helping you to bring yourself back together, or bring yourself back again into this connection? Now, why is connection so important? Because it's one very strong need in any relationship. And now I would like to ask you to think about the 3 most important needs that you have in your relationship, not that you have in general, but that you have particularly in your relationship. What are the 3 most important needs? And then as next, what are the 3 most important needs you believe your partner has? And by the way, you have the homework to do this exercise with your partner as well, and ask them to do the same. And then you can compare, and that can already help you maybe find out more about each other. So in order to help you with finding these needs, I have prepared a list of needs. It's not complete, but it gives you a little bit of food for thought. And so I need to share the screen. I hope it's possible for me. And I seem to have the power to do this. Okay, here we go. So this is a long list of needs, and I would like you to scan through this list now and see what are the 3 most important needs for you and for your partner. And if you like, you can share them in the chat, but you can also just note them down for yourself. You can, of course, also take a screenshot if you like. I'm sure you have the difficulty of finding the 3 most important ones. It's not so difficult to find all the ones that you have, because we actually have all of those to a certain degree. Some of them more, some of them less, and that is actually part of our personality. based on our experiences, our traumas, and unmet needs from the past. But becoming aware of what are actually your core needs is very important in being able to avoid and overcome conflict. And you can also see if there are any needs that often pop up in your life or in your relationship that are not met. And maybe if they are not met in your relationship, maybe it is also time to think about if there are other ways of getting them met and not putting all the pressure onto your partner to get them met. There are some needs maybe that you should exclusively try to meet with your partner, like sexual expression, for example. But there are other needs that can definitely be met by other people or in other ways. And it's not necessarily only your partner who can meet them. All right, I will stop sharing now. And I hope that you have found some. So I'm curious to see. Okay, so some people shared empathy, peace of mind, connection, honesty, intimacy, presence. Here's a longer message from Valerie. Oh no, yeah, okay. I will, that was a direct message, so I now I said the name. Anyway, I would like you to also now think about your favorite strategy. And with strategy, I mean the way with which you meet your needs, with which you would like your needs to be met. What is your favorite strategy to meet those three needs? And do you know the favorite strategy of your partner to meet those three needs? And how regularly are you applying those, or are you meeting your partner's needs with these strategies? So think about what is the way how you get your need met. So now that you have thought a little bit about strategies to meet needs, I would like to come to the point of what is actually a conflict. The conflict is not necessarily conflict of needs, because needs normally do not necessarily have to conflict with each other. It's rather the way we try to get them met that is in conflict or can be in conflict with each other. So it's the strategies that conflict with each other, not necessarily the needs. You can actually meet all needs, not necessarily always at the same time, but you can meet those needs if you're open to different strategies. So, for example, if my wife wants to know, wants to be in connection with me during the day, and I'm not at home, and she wants to be in connection, and I don't send her a message, and I don't call her, and she doesn't know where I am, then her favorite way maybe is that I give her a call. And maybe I just don't have the time to give her a call. So I have a different need, maybe to be efficient at work, or to not be disturbed in a way that I have I can protect my time to a certain way, and at the same time, her need is to still connect it. And then we can talk about how can we find this a strategy, how can we find a way that she feels connected while I'm not interrupted. So But that could be, for example, that I just send her a message instead of giving her a call whenever I finish a coaching, for example. Um, and that means also that if I forget it, that she's not angry on it, because it's very important in a relationship to stay in this field of everything can, it doesn't have to. Because the moment you force someone to do something, or you expect someone to do it this way, you create a threat of autonomy, a threat of freedom of choice. And then people go into resistance. And that's when things harden up and become, grow into a conflict normally, because we want to protect ourselves. All right. I know that we are already going towards the last 10 minutes, more or less 30 minutes before we go to the question and answer section. And still, I would like to ask you if there are any questions along the way so far, any comments that you want to make, because I have been talking all the time, even though you have been contributing with some information in the chat. Is there anyone who wants to open his microphone or say something?
I have a question. You spoke
Mm-hmm.
about rituals. I'm Johnny from India. You spoke
Mm-hmm.
about ritualistic list. What what if they are spontaneous rather than being ritualistic? I just wanted to have your views on
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one does not exclude the other. So the rituals, the planned rituals, are there as a reminder and as a pillar during the day. But the spontaneous acts of connection, for example, are as important as the rituals, of course. If everything is just on the ritual basis, then of course it can feel robotic like. And of course, during the ritual, you can make it special as well. Yeah, you can create special moments in the moment of the ritual as well. Um, I can tell you that in one day, minimum, I kiss my wife 150 times, minimum. Yeah. So this is something where I can just share with you that it's not only the times when we have the morning kiss and the evening kiss or the 5 minutes after lunch. It's all in between. Yeah. So there is a lot of connection going on that is contributing to this feeling close to each other, and that prevents us from having deeper conflicts. By the way, I want to say something also about conflicts. Conflicts are important as well, as you know, because they mean growth. And whenever someone is making you angry, it's actually an opportunity to grow, and you can be rather thankful and grateful for that than angry. Because and conflict means that you are experiencing something that is touching you, maybe at a sensitive point that you haven't been realizing so far. That is a sensitive point. Maybe there's a story behind, maybe there's something that you have not realized about your life, and it's important to stay curious here. And by the way, have you ever been curious and angry at the same time? It's not possible. So being curious is the best way of avoiding to be really, really angry. And with curious, I mean being curious about what's going on in you, what are the needs that are not met, what are you experiencing in this moment, what are the feelings, but also what is the other person going through, and why is he actually trying to do what he's doing. And that is something I want to also share on my screen here. I have to just wait a second until it builds up. Now, everything we do and say is an attempt to meet a need. Everything. This means that whenever, let's see if I can find this here. Just a second. Okay, here. So everything we do and say is an attempt to meet a need. That means it's not necessarily successful. Sometimes we try to meet a need by screaming at someone, you should respect me more. Yeah, do you think the other person respects you more when you actually do not respect the other person? Well, this is a helpless attempt, and it's sometimes also a suicidal attempt, because the way you express this, the way you try to meet your need, is actually failing so badly that you're not sacrificing the other person's needs, and you're also sacrificing your own needs. Maybe your need for harmony and connection, but you meet your need for venting off. Yes, that you do, but you sacrifice so much more. So it's very costly to vent off and meet your need in this way. Well, you need to let the negative energy out somehow. I get that. And there are other ways of doing this without having to sacrifice your needs and the needs of the other person. And that's something where we may touch on in the next part, where I would like to share with you a list of do's and don'ts with regards to conflicts. So the other sentence I already said is that you cannot be furious and angry at the same time. So keep that in mind also as a reminder whenever you're angry. Curious means wanting to understand what is actually the reason for why you are angry and why the other person is angry. And don't be too superficial here, because anger is normally just the first layer of feelings. Below the anger, we very often find sadness, disappointment, frustration, and maybe loneliness. And we don't want to feel all these unpleasant feelings, because anger helps us to direct the emotions to someone else. We feel okay, the other person is not okay. So I'm okay, you're not okay is what we express with anger. And with that, we are disconnected, but also disconnected with ourselves. So anger is actually a sign of being disconnected with our own feelings and needs. And it's important to be curious about what's actually really alive in us in this moment. So as we don't have so much time left, I would just like to quickly share with you some do's and don'ts in relationships, in managing relationships. So managing relationship, managing conflict in relationships. So here we go. And I want to say just a few things to each part. So starting with the do's, this stepping back means that whenever there's a conflict or where some anger arising, try to step back, try to bring some distance to your feelings so that you can observe them more and be with a curious mindset, rather than identifying with them in a full scale that they overwhelm you. Keep as a value for yourself that you basically respect the person, whatever the other person is doing, that you respect the other person. Because only if you don't understand what the other person is doing, why the other person is doing, it doesn't mean that the other person is not worth respecting. So this basic attitude of I'm okay, you're okay, it's very helpful to keep a healthy relationship. Listening with empathy is certainly easily said and not always easily be done. I can only recommend you to go learn more about that, practice it. It's something everyone can learn. Some people are naturally more close to it. It has to do a lot of how much self-empathy you can actually give to yourself. We men have more difficulties than women have in general, because we have numbed our feelings on the way of growing up, which is just well, the way we could survive better. Now, empathy is something, a bigger topic, and I can recommend you to join one of my webinars. I will come back to that later, where you can learn that in more detail. overcoming your ego and admitting mistakes is certainly important. And that means that you also step back and you don't overcome, you don't want to be right all the time, or you can accept that the other person can also be right. The time to cool off is, I mean, I think everyone knows that the day, one day afterwards, you may think about the same conflict in a different way, less emotional, and you should use that. Whenever it's necessary, try to take that time and force yourself not to go and put oil into the fire here and going more into the emotional state. And we talked about the proactive connecting. And one thing that's very interesting is that if you look at those couples that stay together for a long time, or that never, let's say, divorce or separate, it's because from scientific research, they found out that it's not so much only the way they argue and they have conflicts, it's much more about how much healing power they have in their relationship. What are the processes of healing? How much can they put focus on the healing of any conflict? And how do they do this? Is that a healthy way? And the connection is a very important part here, but the healing is a very centerpiece. It's, some people are very emotional and they explode, but afterwards they find a way to connect again. And that is what is much more important than the way you argue with each other. Then the use of force to self-protect. Now this may be strange, and let's look at the right side, use of force to punish. This is the opposite. Sometimes there are situations where you have to protect yourself even with force. I want to give you an example. I had once a girlfriend who would not accept me to leave. I realized I have to leave now, because if I don't leave, I can't control myself, or it's not, we're just going in circles, or I had to leave because of an appointment. I couldn't talk anymore about this, and she just wouldn't let me leave. So she would stand in front of the door, or she would grab me. So she would get really physical about not. And that was the moment where I also had to get physical, but not to punish her, but to protect myself from meeting my needs. And it was just a protection. So I with force, I took her away from me and I pushed her away and ran out. But it was not to punish her, to give her a lesson or anything in this direction. So sometimes there are situations where force is accepted, as long as you're very clear about that it's about self-protection and not about punishing the other person. Then very central, staying in the here and now, and any kind of mindfulness teaches you this, and that's a very centerpiece, not to pull old stories out and talk about this again and again and blame the other person for having done something this in the past. Stay in the here and now and take responsibility for your feelings, because we self-create our feelings. It's nothing that the other person can make us feel, only if we allow it. And at the end of the day, we are responsibility for how strong we feel. That has to do with a lot with our resourcefulness. Have we slept enough? Do we have stress? Are we having have we eaten enough, and so on? All these things add up to our resourcefulness, and this resourcefulness is what creates lower extremes of feelings or stronger feelings. And also the way how we judge ourselves has a lot to do with how we feel, and what sensitivities we created in our life, or we have gone through. It's not our fault. Responsibility and fault is a very different thing, by the way. And let's go to the don'ts quickly. It's important that you detect and you learn, and that meditation can help here to detect your feelings in a state before they overwhelm you. So when you feel, oh, there's something coming up, I can feel the anger coming, then this moment you take a step back, you go into observation, and don't let this overwhelm you, because then it's impossible to control. And of course, it's easily said and done if you tend to have this verbal abuse and attack in situations of conflict because you have experienced the same. It's something where you definitely have to work on, because that is like oil into the fire. Something else is that you try to listen without interrupting the other person. That goes also into the respect part. And one of the things that people, that researchers found out in dysfunctional relationships is that stonewalling, meaning like you just get cold, become cold, and do not communicate with the other person. You withdraw from the communication, and it's nothing. There's nothing wrong with withdrawing for a certain period of time to find yourself. But if you use this to punish the other person or to become just cold, it's a destructive way of self-protection, but it's a destructive way, and that is something you really need to avoid. Threatening, blaming, shame, and of course, in sarcasm, it's all clear and a no-brainer that this does not help to solve or resolve a conflict. It's a destructive way of self-protection, and it's it's like putting fire into the oil, oil into the fire. And so not being a victim, that is the central piece. Don't see yourself as a victim. Don't play the victim role. Try to take responsibility for all your feelings, for your needs, and for what you have done, of course, as well, and how you contributed to this, what has happened. So there's always two sides, and there's always one part that we contributed to this, keeping this alive. And its responsibility can also be split up in response and ability. So the ability to respond, we always have that, and we have to become aware of that responsibility in any relationship that we have. So I stop here and give time for the question and answers. So look into the chat if there's anything else that came up. Okay, here's one question. But what if the partner anger is out of control? My partner is not curious about furious, is not curious but furious. While being angry, how to manage that? And sometimes she doesn't know or understand where she is, what she is talking, which makes me angry as well. Okay, yeah, I can empathize with that. It brings yourself into a state of helplessness when you are exposed to this kind of extreme outrage and uncontrolled emotions by someone else. Now, the first thing is about, are you judging the fact that the other person is behaving like that, or are you can you stay in the here and now and see this as an expression of an attempt of meeting a need, and without taking it personally? Now, there are situations where you have to self-protect yourself, and I talked about that. There are self-protection measures, and it can be that you say, sorry, I will leave right now. And it's not about, can I leave? It's, I leave right now. So you tell the other person with some assertiveness that you have to leave the room now, or you have to go out for a walk, and you return. You can say, I will be back in half an hour. So give the other person the transparency. So it's not about, I want to punish you, so you don't know whenever I come back, I will leave you maybe for good. So this is not what you want to do. It's about staying fair and giving the other person the time to also cool down. So that could be a part of responsibility to respond with that. And of course, when this happened, there are ways where you can help your partner to find ways to work on themselves. And that, of course, implies that you are not doing this with force or with giving strong advice. It's more about how can we find a way that we have less of these heated discussions, and what can we both do? Yeah. So if you stay a little bit more in this, how can we both, what is my responsibility, I want to know, and what can you take as responsibility here? And if it be it that you come and talk with a coach, talk with a therapist, or participate in a training, and that's something that I can certainly invite you to join some of my trainings that certainly help to even go deeper with what I talked about today. I also prepared something here just for you to see. If you see here, oh no, that was the wrong one. I didn't want to share actually. I had this here. So these are the two webinars that I am offering in the next week, or in 1 week time. So on the 19th and the 21st, and these topics relate directly to exactly what we talked about today, and also to that one question, how to manage challenging personalities. But it's important to understand what's actually going on and what the other person triggers in you. And all this we cover there. And also how to manage your own anger and disappointment and so on. So what else? And you can please also open your microphone if you like. Sometimes if both of you want to speak for yourself instead of listening, things might become you two attacking each other. Yeah, of course, in the heat of the moment, it happens that we attack each other, and then it's about who wakes up first and can step back. And what happens to me when I'm really in a situation where I lose the awareness and I do things that where I put oil into the fire and I realize how this actually heats even more up, then I wake up out of my unawareness and go into my awareness. And in order to make a change, make a shift into another position of showing empathy and listening to the other person, I go out of the room, return kind of as a new person. And by leaving the room, let's say I say I have to go to the toilet. I return after 2-3 minutes, and it's like a new start. And that's where I then come with more empathy and say, hey, is it possible that you're also very sad about what has happened, or something like that, where I bring a different tone into the game, and that really changes everything. So let's see. And how to start building trust if your partner once destroyed it? Yes, good question. Now, the best way to rebuild trust if the other person destroyed is if the other person is willing to build the trust again. The other person has to go to this deep feeling of hurt that you received when he trusted, or that you went through when he destroyed the trust. When the other person is willing to go to this place and really, really feel what this happened, how that was for you, then there is a chance of reconciliation and forgiveness, and also of building trust again. But if it's just a sorry, I was drunk, or whatever it was that the other person did, trying to explain without taking responsibility. It's about taking responsibility, and that includes also acknowledging the feelings of the other person in a way that you go through these feelings. Because if the person who did that, destroyed the trust, does not go through these feelings of the other person, does not really see what he or she has done, it is it just keeps firing or in motivating the other person to wanting to punish this person in a way that they will feel this pain by the punishment. But that's a destructive game, and that's to be avoided in a healthy relationship. Okay. All right. Anything else? We are now at 11:16, so we're beyond the question answers and more into the last 10 minutes of, yeah, discussing. Here are my codes. I can just invite you to scan. The lower one is my WeChat account. This one, that I cannot see it now. So one is for China, one is for outside of China, and it's basically the link to YoPay or to Eventbrite, where you can see my webinars, the ones that I just showed on the screen. If you want to register, then go there and find the options. There's always a morning option and an evening option. And I can only encourage you, if you thought that some of the things that I talked about today were useful for you and you want to know more, that's where you will learn more. So I can only encourage you to join. It would be great to have you there. And yeah, apart from that, anything else, please open your mics if there's anything you want to say.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Tilman. That was incredible. Oh, the code is not clear. We will make sure
Oh, okay.
to share
Yeah.
the
Yes,
share
the
the
flyers,
information.
the flyers will be sent afterwards on Monday to everyone, so will be part of the uh, of the uh, of the mail, the follow-up mail. So there's a
Exactly.
chance to find this as well. Just
And
for
I
those
highly
who couldn't
recommend.
wait. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
And I
I
highly
also saw
recommend.
some, thank you, Rieger. I just want to say I also saw one of the participants is one of the persons that joined probably all my courses. Um, it's John. So John, in case you're still there, your camera is off now. Maybe you can say a few words if you like, but maybe he's just gone to the toilet. No,
No,
hi
he's there.
John.
Yeah, how are you doing, guys? How are you doing, man? Thanks a lot for this lovely event. I do recommend to join Tilman workshops. You will get a lot of answers and you will get a lot of understanding of what type of relationship you want and what is the best outcome you want from your relationship. So it's understanding for you and your partners. And he's very experienced guy in terms of relationships. Thanks a lot, Tilman.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John. And just to be clear, this was not planned. This was not. He's not getting paid for saying this.
No, no, no. I didn't get paid. I
and
didn't. This is my personal opinion. I've joined many of them.
It was not planned. I didn't even know that John would participate. But yeah, okay, all right. I really enjoyed this with you. I know it's a shame that there was not the possibility to have more human exchange in the way of open microphone. But in a bigger group, it's of course always a little bit difficult in such a short time. So there is more room for that in the other webinars, also more breakout sessions and more interactive in that regard, also because the group is normally smaller. All right, Raquel, anything
Thank
else you
you.
want to say?
For sure. I just want to thank you. This was really helpful and insightful. We are now going into a 10-minute break, and after we come back from the break, we will have Priyal, an emotional intelligence coach, that will talk about empower yourself with emotional resilience. She's in the room. So Priyal, if you want to just in 1 or 2 sentences say what's going to happen in about 10 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priyal. I'm going to be talking about how we can use emotional resilience to our advantage as we enter 2021. It's been an incredibly challenging time for every one of us, especially since the pandemic started. And I'm going to be talking about why is it important and what strategies we can use as we go into this next year. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. So see you everybody in the other room. I will share my screen so everybody can see what's gonna happen in the other room. Let me just make this full screen so everybody can see it best. There we go. In the other room, Maria Pastorelli, that works very closely with Janine, the organizer of the event, will be talking about growth mindset for clarity. James will put the Zoom details for the other room in the
chat
section.
Yes,
in the chat, exactly.
Mhm.
So everybody can look at the details and feel free to see. All the recordings will be available, so if you choose to stay here with Priyal but you also want to see Maria, you can see the recording later on. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll
Fantastic.
see I'll see everybody in about 7 minutes.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.